Lyrian's boots sank into damp moss as she stepped deeper into the Catherian wilds. Her heart thudded like a drum in her chest, each beat echoing the dread that rose in her throat. Just hours before, she had stood among her people, dressed in the finest fabrics of her home, her hair braided in the traditional style. But when the council saw her pale skin, mismatched eyes, and the long, leaked, jagged scar that ran from her temple to her jaw, they called her an abomination. They stripped her of her rank, her dignity, and her supplies, then shoved her into an unarmed transport shuttle bound for the world's edge. Now, lone and afraid, Lyrian felt each breath grow heavier as the alien jungle closed in around her. Towering ferns arched overhead like the ribs of a beast, shading her in shifting gloom. Strange bioluminescent insects flickered among the underbrush, their ghostly lights dancing on thorny vines that dripped with acidic dew. Every twisted branch and curling leaf seemed to whisper threats she could not understand. She paused beside a giant tree whose bark was mottled green and purple as if painted by an artist obsessed with nightmares. Lyrian pressed her back against the cool trunk and slid to the ground. Her hands trembled, and she pressed them to her face, as though she could erase her own reflection by will. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. To cry here, in the middle of a hostile world, would be to lose herself completely. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. She heard the distant growl of a predator, the snap of a twig as some unseen creature padded through the leaves, the drip of moisture from vine to leaf to ground. She let each sound settle around her, reminding herself that if she stayed still and calm, she might survive. Panic, she told herself, was the true enemy here. Drawing in a shaky breath, Lyrian pulled a thin knife from her belt. Its edge was dull, a relic from her training days aboard the colony ship. She ran a fingertip along the blade, feeling its roughness. It was hardly a weapon, but it was something. Something she could use to pick at vines, to cut away a patch of moss. Or if she were desperate to defend herself, she needed water first. Dehydration could kill faster than any wild beast. Stretching her aching muscles, she rose and pressed onward, forging a path by following the sound of trickling water. Every step was careful. She avoided brambles that hissed when torn and sidestepped luminous mushrooms that released spores when disturbed. Still, she scraped her shin on a jagged root, and hot pain blossomed beneath torn skin. She bit back a cry and tore a strip from her tunic to wrap the wound. Blood seeped into the cloth, a vivid reminder of her frailty. A few minutes later, she reached a narrow stream. The water ran silver in the dim light, edged by stones slick with algae. Lyrian knelt at its bank and cupped her hands, drinking. Greedily, the cold liquid soothed the fire in her throat and filled her with a small surge of hope. She refilled a hollowed leaf she carried and slipped it into her pack. As she stood, something flickered on the far bank. Movement. Two glowing eyes stared back at her from under the ferns. Lyrian froze, estimate of distance flickering in her mind. She weighed flight against fight and chose the only clear option: silence. She held perfectly still, her breath a soft hiss. The eyes blinked, then vanished. The predator perhaps testing her, but it did not approach. Her pulse thudded so loudly she was sure it would give her away. But after a long moment, nothing else came. Lyrian exhaled and sank to one knee. She stared into the water's reflection, her own image blurred by ripples. The face she saw there was pale and marked, yes, but it was also brave, as she thought of her mother's words. True beauty comes from the light in your heart. If her people could not see that, then they did not deserve her loyalty. Night would arrive soon. The Catherian wilds were cold and dangerous under a dark sky. Lyrian knew she needed shelter before dusk. She scanned the tree line and spotted a fallen tree trunk forming a low arch. Its interior was hidden by vines, but it might hold enough space to keep her off the ground and out of sight. With renewed determination, she made her way to the hollow. Carefully, she cut away some vines and stepped inside. The ground beneath was dry, cushioned by centuries of fallen leaves. She arranged her small pack as a pillow, and with a final glance at the creeping shadows, she lay down. Lyrian closed her eyes, telling herself she had done well. She had found water, she had evaded predators, and she had found shelter. Fear still whispered that this was not enough, that any moment could bring death. But she forced the whisper down, replacing it with her own thoughts. I am more than my face. As the alien dusk deepened, she let her mind drift to dreams of rescue. Perhaps a human soldier would come, or maybe she would find a way out herself. But sleep would not come yet. She would keep watch. For now, her eyes remained open, her spirit steady. She would survive the night, and tomorrow she would find a way home. Dawn broke over the Catherian wilds in a dull orange glow. Lyrian woke with a start, the chill of the night still clinging to her bones. She sat up inside the hollow log, listening to the forest come alive. Somewhere nearby, a bird-like creature called out, its song strange and beautiful. Lyrian pressed her fingers to her lips, letting the sound fill her chest with a small warmth. She took a slow breath and vowed to keep moving. Resting too long here would be dangerous. She crouched and stretched aching limbs, then rummaged through her pack. The leaf of stream water was nearly empty. Hunger gnawed at her gut, but she refused to give in to despair. Stepping out into the undergrowth, she scanned for food. The forest floor was carpeted with odd plants, some spiky, some smooth, all unfamiliar. A cluster of bright orange berries caught her eye. Their color glowed like fireflies in the dim light. Lyrian remembered her training. Test a tiny bit first. She plucked one berry, crushed it between her fingers, then touched it to her tongue. A bitter temp made her gag, but no burning followed. Cautiously, she ate 3 more. The sweetness spread warmth through her belly, and her stomach slowed its protest. She gathered as many as her pack could hold, careful not to bruise them. Small victory gave her hope. As she ate, her thoughts drifted to home. She pictured her mother's gentle smile and her father's booming laugh. Tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them away. She reminded herself she was here to survive. She wrapped her braided hair tighter against the rising sun and set off along the riverbank, following where the water glinted through trees. The jungle rose around her, vines hanging like garlands of doom. Lyrian's boots slipped on wet stones as she crossed a shallow creek. She stumbled and fell, tumbling into cold water up to her waist. Her breath froze in her lungs, but she pushed up, shook out her hair, and pressed on. The fall had soaked her tunic, but she felt sharper, alive with adrenaline. A half-mile ahead, she spotted footprints pressed into soft mud. 2 distinct sizes, one small, one larger. The larger pair looked like they might match the human-issued boots she'd seen on a soldier's uniform. Her heart leapt. Could someone else still be alive here? The thought pushed her forward at a quickened pace. She approached the prints. Carefully, eyes darting for signs of danger. Every rustle in the ferns made her pause. A low growl rumbled behind her. She froze, pressing herself against a broad-leafed bush. Her pulse slammed. Something massive was moving toward her. She could feel its weight in the ground vibrations. Her mouth went dry. Lyrian took a steadying breath and waited. The growl faded into the distance, then stopped. She held her breath, listening. After what felt like forever, silence returned. She exhaled and slipped a hand to the small knife. At her belt, it was nothing more than a shard of metal, but it was hers. She steeled her nerves and moved past the bush, following the footprints again. The prints led to a clearing where the remains of a broken scout ship lay half buried in foliage. The hull was cracked, metal twisted like a dead creature. Lyrian's stomach tightened. This was where the soldier crashed. Hope and fear warred in her chest. She knew rescue was possible, but danger lingered here too. With careful steps, she approached the wreck. Perhaps supplies remained. Perhaps someone remained alive. Her breath came fast as she reached the ship's open hatch. She paused, placing a hand on the cold metal. Whatever waited inside could save her or end her journey. She closed her eyes and remembered why she struggled. She was more than scars and judgments. She was brave, and she would not give up. With one last deep breath, Lyrian braced her shoulders and slid into the darkness of the wreck. Lyrian's skin prickled as she slid through the jagged hatch of the scout ship. The air inside was stale and thick with dust. Broken panels lay strewn across the floor, wires dangling like tangled vines. She pressed her hand to a bulkhead. Feeling its cold metal beneath her palm, each breath echoed in her helmet, reminding her how silent death could be. She took cautious steps, her knife held at the ready. Faded emergency lights flickered overhead, casting the corridor in sickly red glow. She recalled the training drills aboard the colony ship. Check corners. Watch for movement. Move quietly. Now those drills mattered more than ever. She rounded a bulkhead and froze as a sound crackled through a damaged cum speaker. A soft groan. Her heart pounded. Someone else was inside. Fear and hope warred in her chest. She edged toward the source, finding the bridge's doorway half collapsed. A shape lay slumped against the console's armored leg, then an arm. Lyrian's breath caught. She crept closer, knife raised, ready to defend herself from friend or foe. Kalon, she whispered, testing the voice she hoped to hear. The figure stirred, ragged breathing echoing in the cramped space. Lyrian's stomach clenched. She knelt beside him and gently tipped his helmet back. Beneath, the young man's face stared up at her eyes, half-closed, face streaked with dirt and dried blood. She asked, voice trembling. His eyes flickered open, confusion clouding them. Tried to speak, but only a hoarse rasp emerged. Lyrian pressed a finger to her lips. She tore a strip of cloth from her tunic, moistened it with water from her leaf flask, and pressed it to his temple. He winced, but did not pull away. Slowly, the man's breathing steadied. He blinked, looking at Lyrian with wary gratitude. With effort, he croaked, "Medic." His voice was faint, but distinctly human. Relief washed over Lyrian. She managed a small smile. "I'm not a medic," she said softly, "but I can help." She searched the console for a medical kit. Under a torn panel, she found a pack labeled with Earth's emblem. She handed him a sterile bandage and antiseptic gel. As he applied the gel to a deep wound on his forearm, Lyrian's own injuries ached in sympathy. The metal shard she held earlier felt heavy in her pack-proof. Her hope had led her here. The man looked up through weary eyes. "I'm Sergeant Marcus Wren," he said, voice stronger now. "I was scouting for survivors when the crash hit." Recognition flared inside Lyrian. This was the soldier she'd read about, the one known for courage on the Rim Worlds. She nodded. "I'm Lyrian," she replied. "The council left me here." Marcus swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You don't deserve that." His words warmed her heart more than any fire. She felt tears threaten, but held. Then back she met his gaze steadily. "Thank you for saving me," she said. "I thought I was alone." Marcus winced as he sat up. "You're safe now," he assured her. He pointed to a panel with flickering lights. "Now, if we can restore power, the cums might work. Then we can call for extraction." Lyrian's hopes surged. She ran fingers over the console, reading alien script that matched her translation guides. Together, they worked to reroute power. Sparks flew, and the lights on the console hissed back to life. A low hum announced the ship's systems rebooting. Lyrian punched the comms button. Static broke, then a crackling voice answered, "This is Commander Hale on the freighter. Do you read?" Tears filled Lyrian's eyes as Marcus's strong voice replied, "This is Wren and Survivor Lyrian. We're alive and need immediate evac." The response was instant. Coordinates locked. 30 minutes. Relief flooded through them. Lyrian sank to the floor, exhaustion and gratitude mingling in her chest. Marcus sat beside her, offering a flask of water. They shared a quiet moment as the ship's lights steadied into a calm blue glow. Outside, the jungle night pressed against the hull, but inside they had found safety in each other's company. As they waited for rescue, Lyrian thought of her, abandoned past and the uncertain future. Yet in that sheltered bridge, with a heroic soldier by her side, she felt something new, belonging. The alien jungle could no longer define her. Her courage unto humans' kindness had given her new purpose. And so, as the engines of the scout ship thrummed back to life, Lyrian closed her eyes and allowed herself to hope. Tomorrow, she would begin to find home again. The soft hum of the scout ship's revived engines vibrated beneath Lyrian's feet. She and Sergeant Wren sat on the dusty floor, backs leaning against a bulkhead as they waited for extraction. Outside, the jungle night pulsed with alien sounds distant. Roars, rustling leaves, and the soft drip of unseen waterfalls. Inside they were safe, but only for a little while. Lyrian pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The sterile lights of the bridge made her skin feel cold. She looked at Marcus, whose eyes were fixed on the viewport. "Do you think our ride will come soon?" she asked, voice small. Marcus turned, offering a reassuring smile. "They're on their way? The freighter can't risk landing here in the dark, so they'll send a shuttle at first light." He tucked a stray lock of her hair behind her ear. "Until then, we wait." Lyrian nodded, though her stomach twisted with worry. Night in the Catherian wilds was the most dangerous time. Predators roamed freely under the cover of darkness, and even the ship's hull might not protect them forever. Her mind replayed every rustle she'd heard on the way here. She pressed her hand to the cool metal floor, grounding herself. "I still feel their eyes on me," she whispered. "Even inside, I can't shake the fear." Marcus reached out and placed his hand over hers. His touch was warm and certain. "You're safe with me," he said quietly. "Won't let anything hurt you." His steady voice felt like a shield around her heart. Lyrian closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. Memories of the Council's cruelty, the moment they threw her into that shuttle, flickered in her mind. She had believed she was worthless. But here, in the dim light of the bridge, she felt something else. Worthiness. Worthiness because she survived. Worthiness because someone saw her value. She took a deep breath. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." He squeezed her hand and rose. "Come on," he said. "Let's make this place more comfortable." He moved to a side console and activated the ship's climate controls. A gentle warmth replaced the chill, and the emergency lights shifted from red to soft white. Lyrian watched the change, feeling her tension ease. She sat up, brushing dust from her tunic. "You always know what to do," she said. Marcus shrugged, a playful grin tugging at his lips. "I've had practice." He produced 2 ration packs from a storage bin and handed one to her. "Eat. You need strength." She tore open the pack and ate slowly, savoring the flavor. It tasted of home-warm grains and sweet broth. She swallowed and met his gaze. "I never expected kindness out here." He sat beside her, opening his own pack. "Compassion doesn't end at our world's edge," he said. "We're all human, no matter which planet we come from." His words settled in her heart like soft stones. Suddenly the ship shuddered. Alarms blared as lights flickered. Lyrian's heart leapt into her throat. Marcus jumped to his feet. Scanning the console. "Rock slide," he said grimly. The hull took a hit. "We have a small breach in the engine room." He dashed for the hatch, and Lyrian followed. Inside the engine room, steam hissed from a twisted pipe. Sparks danced around a jagged tear in the wall. Frozen coolant dripped onto the floor, steaming as it hit the hot deck plates. Marcus knelt and secured a seal kit from a compartment. He looked back at Lyrian. "Help me clamp this," he said, voice calm despite the urgency. She knelt beside him, hands trembling as she held the seal in place. Marcus tightened the clamp, harsh metal grinding against the pipe. Steam sputtered for a moment, then stopped. The alarm silenced, and the emergency lights steadied. Lyrian exhaled a shaky breath. "Thank you," she whispered. He wiped soot from her cheek and smiled. "Teamwork," he said. "Make a good team." She nodded, pride blossoming in her chest. For the first time since her abandonment, she felt strong. Not just because she survived, but because she helped save another. They climbed back to the bridge, checking each other for injuries. Marcus draped an arm around her shoulders. "Morning can't come soon enough," he said. Lyrian leaned into him, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The jungle's dangers still lurked beyond the hull, but inside the scout ship, she found warmth and courage she had never known. As they settled back, waiting for dawn, Lyrian realized that fear no longer controlled her. She carried Hopand in her hand, she carried Marcus's, and with that hope, she would face whatever came next. Morning light filtered through the viewport as Lyrian and Sergeant Wren waited for the extraction shuttle. The jungle's green shadows receded under the rising sun, revealing the twisted wreckage of the scout ship. Lyrian pressed her hand to the glass, breathing in hope with the warm light. She felt renewed strength in her limbs after the long night. Marcus stood beside her, scanning the perimeter. "They should be here any moment," he said, voice calm but eager. Lyrian turned to him, a soft smile on her lips. "We made it," she whispered. "Thanks to you." He shook his head. "You made it," he replied. "You kept us alive." His words stirred something warm in her chest. She looked away, focusing on the distant treetops where birds swooped and sang. The alien world felt less hostile now, softened by dawn's promise. A distant hum grew louder, and a silver shuttle broke through the canopy. Its engines roared as it descended to the clearing beside the wreck. Lyrian's heart leapt. She dusted off her cloak and squared her shoulders. Marcus offered his arm, and she took it gratefully. Together, they climbed down the ship's ramp toward freedom. The shuttle door opened with a hiss. 2 crew members in Earth Expedition uniforms greeted them, relief shining in their eyes. They helped Marcus and Lyrian into the cabin, checking vitals and offering blankets. Warmth and chatter filled the small space voices from home after a night of silence. Lyrian felt tears gather at her eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to stay strong. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyrian pressed her forehead against the window. The jungle fell away beneath them, a sea of green dotted with the wreckage. Below, she thought of the council who had cast her out of the night she had spent alone with fear. But now she realized she was not alone. She had Marcus's kindness and the strength she found in herself. The shuttle docked with the freighters. Airlock. Lyrian and Marcus stepped onto the polished deck, greeted by the hum of life support systems and the bustling crew. Colonists, dusty and weary, lined the corridor, their faces lighting up at the sight of survivors. Murmurs of joy and applause followed their passage. Lyrian held Marcus's hand as they walked, shoulder to shoulder. Commander Hale waited at the end of the hall, saluted sharply, pride and relief in his expression. "Sergeant Wren, you performed well," he said, then turned to Lyrian. "And you, survivor, showed remarkable courage. Welcome aboard." Lyrian curtsied in her own fashion, surprised at the ceremony. She felt every eye on her, some curious, some admiring. She straightened, lifting her chin. In that moment, she knew she belonged among these people. Survivors bound by hardship and hope. The commander led them to the infirmary, where medics examined Lyrian's injuries. As they dressed her wounds, Lyrian sat quietly, the steady hum of medical equipment soothing her nerves. A young nurse offered her a cup of warm tea. Lyrian accepted with a nod, sipping the sweet liquid. It tasted of home, far more comforting than any alien berry. When the exam was over, Marcus escorted her to the observation deck. Through wide windows, Earth's blue planet shone in the star-speckled sky. Lyrian's breath caught. She had not dared to imagine Earth so close. It glowed with promise. She turned to Marcus. "I never thought I'd see home again," she said softly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You will," he promised, "and you'll have a place there." His voice was steady, full of faith. Lyrian felt tears slip free. She let them fall this time, each drop a release of all her fear and doubt. Marcus handed her a tissue, his thumb brushing her hand. "It's okay," he said. "You earned this." Lyrian wiped her eyes and met his gaze. In those deep blue eyes, she saw honor and warmth. She took a steady breath, carrying both her past and her hope for the future. As the freighter set course for Earth, Lyrian stood at the window, her scarred reflection softened by the starlight. She placed a hand over her heart. She had survived betrayal and danger. She had found courage and kindness in unexpected places. And now, as the stars streaked by outside the viewport, She allowed herself to dream once more of family, acceptance, and a world where appearances mattered little beside a brave heart. She smiled. Whatever challenges lay ahead on Earth, she was ready because she was more than her scars. She was Lyrian, survivor and warrior of the Catherian wilds, and her story was just beginning. The freighter's engines thrummed beneath Lyrian's feet as she walked the corridor beside Sergeant Marcus Wren. Each step echoed the soft hum of machinery and the distant chatter of crew members preparing for arrival. Lyrian pressed her hand to the cool wall panel, steadying her nerves. Tomorrow, she would see Earth's surface again. The thought filled her chest with both excitement and fear. She paused at a viewport, staring out at the star-filled void. She saw the blue-green curve of a world she had only dreamed of for months. The memories of the jungle, the dark nights, the alien cries, the sting of betrayal faded for a moment, replaced by longing for home. She closed her eyes, letting the stars guide her back to hope. Marcus joined her, leaning on the railing. "Excited?" he asked quietly. His voice was calm, warm. Lyrian opened her eyes and nodded. "Terrified," she admitted. "I don't know how they will see me now." Her hands shook slightly. She had changed, scarred in body and heart, but would Earth accept her? He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are brave," he said. "Scarred or not, you survived. That is strength." His words were simple, but they sank deep into her soul. Lyrian let out a shaky breath and managed a small smile. She was not alone anymore. They walked to the mess hall together. The room buzzed with activity. Colonists planning their return, engineers checking data, medics arranging final supplies. Lyrian and Marcus sat at a clean table, each handed a warm cup of tea. She cradled the cup between her palms, savoring its heat. It tasted of home, earthy and sweet. As they drank, Lyrian shared stories of her childhood on Ganymede's Reach, her favorite songs, and the books she had read. Marcus listened with genuine interest, asking gentle questions. He told her of his own home deserts and wide plains where winds swept across golden fields. Their voices rose and fell like a melody of two worlds. A sudden rumble shook the deck. Crew members rushed past, voices urgent. Lyrian and Marcus stood as an announcement crackled over the speakers. "Prepare for atmospheric entry in 1 hour. All personnel to safety stations." The room emptied in minutes. Lyrian's heart fluttered. The final step toward Earth was coming. They made their way to the safety station, a small compartment with secured seats facing a wide window. Outside, they could see the planet's blue edge grow larger by the second. Lyrian's breath caught in her throat. She gripped the armrest. Recalling her loneliness in the jungle, she sat with someone who believed in her. As the freighter began its descent, the window glowed bright. Heat radiated through the glass, and the engines roared louder. Lyrian closed her eyes, remembering every lesson she learned. Stay calm, focus on breathing, trust in what you know. The shuttle shook, but she held tight. Marcus sat beside her, his presence a steady anchor. When the ship cleared the atmosphere, the roar subsided to a low hum. Lyrian opened her eyes to fields and oceans below. Clouds drifted lazily across continents she had only read about in textbooks. Tears filled her eyes, not of fear now, but of wonder. Earth was more beautiful than she ever imagined. The freighter docked at the orbital station with a gentle thud. Lights blinked and doors hissed open. Lyrian and Marcus stepped into a bright corridor, where Earth's crisp air mixed with recycled station breath. Technicians greeted them, scanning identification and supplying fresh uniforms. Lyrian's new uniform was simple, pale fabric with the United Earth crest on her chest. She smoothed it over her scars, feeling both nervous and proud. In the welcome hall, families of crew members and colonists waited with banners and cheers. Lyrian's heart pounded as faces turned toward her. Some paused, uncertain. Others smiled wide. A little girl ran forward, clutching a handmade sign. "Welcome home, brave Lyrian." The girl's mother hurried after her, apologizing. Lyrian knelt and took the child's hand. "Thank you," Lyrian whispered, her voice thick with Emotion. The girl beamed. Marcus stood behind her, pride shining in his eyes. In that moment, Lyrian understood truly what home meant. Not a place, but the people who accept you without question. Hands reached out to shake hers. Voices offered warm welcomes. And as she walked down the line, Lyrian felt her fear dissolve. She had been abandoned, stranded, and tested. Now, she was embraced by Earth, by kind hearts, and by the soldier who had saved her. At the end of the line, Marcus offered his arm. Lyrian placed her hand in his, grateful beyond words. Together, they stepped forward into the bright future, leaving behind the jungle's shadows. Lyrian's scars would remain, but they know. Longer to find her. She was home at last, and her story was far from over. A week had passed since Lyrian's arrival on Earth, and the bright corridors of the orbital station felt more like home than the Catherian wilds ever could. Each morning, she woke to the gentle hum of life support systems and the smell of fresh coffee from the nearby cafe. Yet her heart still raced with memories of betrayal and the jungle's dangers. She pressed a hand to her scar each time she felt doubt, reminding herself how far she had come that morning. She stood before a holoscreen displaying messages from her family back on Ganymede's reach. Her mother's smiling face floated in midair, eyes shining with pride. "My brave girl," her mother whispered. "You showed them your true strength." Lyrian's throat tightened as tears swirled. In her eyes, she reached out and touched the holoscreen. "Thank you, Mother," she said softly. "I carry your love with me." After the call, Lyrian met Sergeant Marcus Wren in the station's arboretum room filled with earth plants and soft sunlight. He handed her a mug of warm tea and offered a reassuring nod. "Ready for your interview?" he asked gently. Today's broadcast would share her story with millions. A chance to show the universe that courage mattered more than looks. Lyrian swallowed and took a steadying sip. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "What if they judge me again?" Marcus smiled, brushing a leaf from her cloak. "They won't," he said. "They'll see who you are, brave, kind, and strong." His confidence bolstered hers. She nodded and followed him to the studio, where cameras lined the walls and technicians adjusted lights. The host greeted her with a warm smile. "Lyrian, your story has inspired millions," she began, voice gentle. "What would you like people to remember?" Lyrian looked directly into the camera, seeing not a screen, but a chance to speak for everyone judged too harshly by appearance. She drew a deep breath. "I was dumped in a jungle because of how I looked," she said, voice steady. "I thought that meant I had no value. But I learned that true worth comes from within our courage, our kindness, and our determination. If you ever feel judged for your scars or differences, remember, your heart is stronger than any opinion." Applause echoed off-screen. Lyrian felt warmth bloom in her chest. The interview ended, and the host embraced her. Marcus joined them, pride shining in his eyes, in the days that followed. Letters arrived from all over Earth and beyond, children, drawing pictures of Lyrian as a hero, elders sharing stories of their own hardships, and even Catherian exiles thanking her for changing attitudes back home. Lyrian read each message with gratitude, tears of joy mingling with relief. One afternoon, Commander Hale visited her quarters. "We'd like you to join our diplomatic team," he offered. "Your experience and language skills can bridge gaps between species. The galaxy needs voices like yours." Lyrian's heart soared. To turn her pain into purpose felt like the highest honor. She nodded, voice firm. "I accept." That evening, Marcus and Lyrian walked on the station's observation deck. Below them, Earth's continents shimmered with lights. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You've changed so many lives," he said softly, "and you'll change more." Lyrian leaned into him, feeling hope blossom in her heart. "I never thought my scars could lead to this," she replied, "but now I know they are part of my story, part of what makes me stronger." They watched Earth's sun set, painting the horizon in gold and rose. Lyrian closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of the universe around her. She thought back to the night in the jungle, when every shadow threatened her life. Now, she stood safe, respected, and ready for whatever came next. As darkness fell, the stars beyond the viewport glimmered like promises. Lyrian raised her hand, touching the glass. "To new beginnings," she whispered. Marcus smiled and touched, his hand to hers, mirror-imaging her gesture. "To new beginnings," he echoed. Together. They stood in quiet celebration, two souls connected by courage and compassion, looking forward to a future where no one would be judged by their appearance, but by the strength of their heart. And in that moment, Lyrian knew her story had only just begun.